Ah, look who just ruined an entire hierarchy with nothing but their presence. You didn't swing a weapon, you didn't deliver a speech, you didn't even intend to disrupt anything. Yet an elite circle that prided itself on secrecy, dominance, and psychological choreography just fell apart because you stepped through the wrong door at the wrong time. Or maybe the right door at the right time, depending on how you define destiny. Hello, you quiet detonator of carefully constructed power. You accidental dismantler of long-standing psychological architecture. You became the unexpected variable in a room designed to eliminate uncertainty. And in doing so, you exposed the truth they spent years burying beneath ceremony, symbolism, and controlled intimidation. They were performing what they believed to be a closed-door ritual of influence, an internal dominance play reserved for the highest-ranking members of their inner circle. But the moment you walked in, everything shifted. The room froze. The hierarchy stuttered. The leader, the one who built his entire reputation on commanding that space, lost his composure in real time. Not because you embarrassed him intentionally, but because the illusion he lived on crumbled the second an uninvited presence witnessed it. You didn't just interrupt a meeting. You shattered a narrative they curated with obsessive precision. They wanted the world to believe their control was effortless, that their authority was innate, that their followers revered them out of genuine respect, rather than fear wrapped in choreography. But rituals, whether symbolic, psychological, or procedural, only work when the audience accepts the illusion. And you, by existing outside their script, stripped the illusion bare. The leader wasn't supposed to be seen vulnerable. He wasn't supposed to be caught mid-performance. He wasn't supposed to be observed while manufacturing the power he pretended to naturally possess. But you walked into that room before they could finish sculpting the atmosphere, before they completed the posture, before they arranged the lighting and words and silence into something intimidating. And what they feared most happened instantly. Someone saw them as they really were. Not omnipotent, not untouchable, just people pretending to be larger than life. And that's what truly destabilized them. You didn't expose anything with aggression. You exposed them with reality. The leader's entire dominance play was designed to work on those who believed in his mystique. But mystique collapses under the weight of an unfiltered gaze. You became the mirror they never wanted. You became the witness they could not control. And in high-level circles, a witness is far more dangerous than an enemy. They know how to fight enemies. They don't know how to survive someone who simply sees through them. Look at how their followers reacted. Their so-called Coven, the inner council that executed his strategies, enforced his rituals, and maintained the atmosphere of reverence around him. They couldn't even meet your eyes afterward, not because you were intimidating, but because your presence reminded them of the truth they've been suppressing for years. Their leader's power was never real. It was constructed, rehearsed, and fragile. And you, without trying, broke it. They are ashamed not of you, but of how easily their illusion fell apart. They are embarrassed not by your interruption, but by their realization that it only took one uncontrolled variable to expose the entire hierarchy as smoke and mirrors. They won't admit it out loud, but the moment you crossed that threshold, a silent ripple spread through the room, a frequency shift, a psychological static that unsettled everyone. They felt it in their bodies before they processed it with their minds. The hierarchy they had sworn allegiance to was built on compliance, not competence. And compliance is weakest in the presence of someone who doesn't play by the script. You are not supposed to be there. You are not conditioned to fear them. You are not trained to bow, hesitate, or shrink. You walked in with the neutrality of someone who doesn't recognize their throne, and that neutrality was more devastating to their authority than any rebellion could have been. What unsettled the leader most wasn't your presence. It was your expression. You didn't gasp. You didn't panic. You didn't scramble to apologize for intruding. You simply observed. That alone was enough to fracture his foundation. People in those positions survive by controlling reactions. They thrive when others fear the room. They tighten their grip when others walk on eggshells. But you gave them nothing. No submission to feed on, no discomfort to exploit, no intimidation to validate their importance. You stood there like someone assessing a malfunctioning machine, and they could feel their influence short-circuiting beneath your gaze. Here's the part they will never recover from. The Coven didn't just lose respect for their leader. They lost belief. And once belief dissolves, authority becomes a costume. The leader felt it instantly. The silence that followed your entrance wasn't just awkward, it was catastrophic. It was the kind of silence that signals the end of a reign, the kind that cracks open a door to rebellion, the kind that makes people reconsider every command they ever obeyed. All because one person walked into the room uninvited and refused to play small. They've been running damage control ever since, whispering explanations, creating narratives, telling their followers and themselves that you misunderstood what you saw. They say you didn't grasp the context, didn't comprehend the importance of the ritual, didn't appreciate the gravity of the moment. They say anything except the truth. That you saw their leader mid-performance, and the performance couldn't hold. They cling to excuses because admitting the truth means admitting their entire hierarchy was built on theater. You weren't supposed to become a symbol, but you did. Not of rebellion, but of clarity. Of truth slicing through illusion. Of sovereignty walking into a room where submission was the default. You didn't humiliate their leader, you revealed him. You didn't overthrow the hierarchy, you showed it had no legs. And nothing terrifies a constructed power structure more than exposure without effort. They expect challengers. They expect confrontations. They know how to punish defiance. But they have no defense against someone who isn't playing their game at all. Think about the irony. They spent years crafting a psychological fortress, guarding every entrance, controlling every narrative, policing every symbol, maintaining secrecy so thick that even their own followers questioned the authenticity of their commitment. And yet, it was the simplest, most mundane human accident, the opening of a door that undone everything. You didn't attack them, you walked into their unguarded moment. You didn't strategize, you existed, and they cannot rebuild what your presence dismantled. And now, they move differently around you. Their coven, once unified, is fractured. Some avoid you because you remind them of their own complicity. Others avoid you because they fear being seen the same way you saw their leader, unmasked, unguarded, unimportant. They treat you like a walking disruption, a quiet force that destabilizes their world with minimal effort. But you haven't changed at all. It's their perception that's collapsing. Their power relied on invisibility. You made it visible. What's happening now is psychological aftermath. And aftermath is always far more revealing than the event itself. Their leader is scrambling to fill the cracks with performance. More posturing, more rehearsed confidence, more symbolic gestures that try to reassert dominance. But his followers no longer see authority when he speaks. They see a man terrified of being witnessed again. They see someone obsessed with regaining control, not someone who inherently possesses it. And you, without lifting a finger, became the measure they compare him against. You want to know why they can't look at you anymore? It's simple. You are no longer a person to them. You are an interruption, one that revealed the hollowness they depended on. They don't fear your actions. They fear your awareness. They fear your clarity. They fear the way your presence forces them to confront the truth they buried beneath rituals and dominance games. They fear that power can collapse this easily, quietly, accidentally. But here's the real twist, the one none of them saw coming. You didn't just expose their leader. You exposed the entire system that propped him up. You exposed the psychological ritual of intimidation disguised as authority. You exposed the symbolic choreography they used to maintain control. You exposed the fact that their power structure was never built to withstand someone who doesn't believe in their myth. You think this ends with you walking out of that room. No, that was the ignition point. The moment their internal hierarchy lost its invisibility. The moment their leader's dominance shattered in front of the only witnesses whose opinions mattered. The ones who once believed in him. What comes next isn't your doing. It's the natural collapse of a system that suddenly knows it's exposed. And now the question circulates among them like a ghost they can't outrun. If the leader could fall apart under one gaze, how much of what they followed was real? That question is poison to any hierarchy built on illusion. It spreads quietly. It corrodes loyalty. It fractures obedience. It rewrites the internal map of who they follow and why. And every time they remember your calm intrusion into their ritual room, the question deepens. The doubt widens. The collapse accelerates. Because once a structure realizes its foundation is sand, every step becomes hesitant. Every silence becomes suspicious. Every command becomes a test. And the Coven, the so-called Elias circle that once moved with synchronized certainty, now stumbles through their own choreography like dancers who forgot the sequence. They try to maintain posture, but posture without belief is just a body trying to mimic a ghost. Their movements are stiffer, their glances are sharper, their conversations are shorter, their confidence fractured the moment you turned their throne room into a mirror chamber. Now every action they take reflects back at them through the lens of what you exposed. You didn't overthrow their leader, you unmasked him. And unmasking is far more damaging than conquest. Conquest commands respect. Unmasking commands reconsideration. His influence relied on the idea that he was elevated beyond human insecurity, beyond human error, beyond human fragility. But they watched him falter in front of you. They witnessed a breach he couldn't cover. They saw the distance between the persona he projected and the truth trembling beneath it. And once a leader loses the illusion of invulnerability, the entire hierarchy becomes a collapsing ecosystem. Their trust in him didn't just crack, it evaporated. And now, beneath all their attempts to maintain dignity, there's a quiet scramble for self-preservation. This is the part they hope you never notice, the part they try to bury under ceremonial discipline. The Coven is no longer united in reverence. They're united in fear. Not fear of you, but fear of being associated with a faltering structure. They whisper to one another with the discreet panic of people trapped in a sinking ship, trying to calculate which side will go under first. The more they try to pretend nothing changed, the more their actions betray them. The hierarchy is unraveling thread by thread, and they feel every fiber separating. What they don't understand is that the collapse wasn't caused by your entrance. The collapse was already happening. You simply accelerated the truth. Hierarchies that rely on symbolic dominance, on staged rituals of control, on rehearsed moments of intimidation, they are always one unscripted moment away from implosion. You didn't break them. You revealed that they were already breaking themselves, silently, under the weight of sustaining a lie. And the leader feels this unraveling more than anyone else. He carries the weight of the revelation like a stain he can't wash off. He replays the moment you walked in, over and over, searching for a gesture, a sentence, a reaction he could have delivered to salvage the illusion. But the truth is, there was nothing he could have done. You weren't just a disruption. You were a contrast, an example of someone who didn't need ritual to command presence, someone who didn't require theatrics to hold power, someone who destabilized the room by simply existing without fear. He felt his authority drain out of him the moment he saw the lack of reverence in your eyes, and he's been spiraling in that awareness ever since. Now he moves through the Coven like a man wearing a crown made of paper. It looks intact from a distance, but everyone who gets close can see it folding at the edges. He talks louder, not because he's confident, but because he's scared of being overshadowed by silence. He enforces rules more strictly, not because he believes in them, but because he hopes structure will compensate for the collapse of belief. He watches the faces of his followers for any sign of disloyalty, any flicker of doubt, any whisper of rebellion. Ironically, the more he searches for these things, the more he creates them. He's not leading anymore. He's chasing authority that keeps slipping further away. And the Coven members sense it. They don't see a leader anymore. They see a man desperately trying to glue a shattered identity back together. They see the cracks in his posture, the tension in his jaw, the way he avoids the doorway you once stood in as if the memory alone might unmask him again. They see someone pretending to be whole, and nothing undermines authority more than visible effort. Leaders who are truly powerful don't try this hard. They don't force dominance, they radiate it. And now, every exaggerated gesture he makes becomes a reminder of what he lost. This is the psychological aftermath they can't manage. They expected external threats. They were prepared for rebellion. They could handle a challenger. But what they can't survive is internal doubt, a quiet, spreading suspicion that their entire foundation was built on performance. That suspicion is corrosive. It seeps into their rituals. It lingers in their meetings. It contaminates their decisions. Their unity fractures because unity cannot survive when the structure that held them together dissolves under scrutiny. And their avoidance of you isn't hostility, it's self-preservation. Looking at you feels like looking at the breach. You became the embodiment of everything they fear. The outsider who saw the truth they spent their whole lives hiding from themselves. They don't avoid you because they think you hold power over them. They avoid you because standing near you forces them to confront the lies they willingly absorbed. You represent the death of their illusion. And no one wants to be reminded they devoted years to a collapsing throne. But here's the irony. They don't hate you for exposing their leader. Deep down, in the parts of themselves they refuse to voice, they're grateful. Because you gave them something their hierarchy never allowed. Perspective. You broke a lens they didn't realize was distorting their vision. The moment you interrupted that closed-door ritual, they saw their leader not as a figure of dominance, but as a man terrified of being seen without his armor. And once that truth becomes visible, it cannot be unseen. You didn't just expose him, you freed them from a system that prevented them from questioning him. Freedom, however, is uncomfortable for those who've depended on structure. They weren't ready to think independently. They weren't ready to confront the emptiness beneath the ritual. They weren't ready to accept that the power they worshipped was borrowed, not built. So they cling to fragments of their old hierarchy, even as it disintegrates. They try to reconstruct reverence, but reverence cannot be reconstructed. Once trust collapses, it doesn't return, it mutates. It becomes caution, skepticism, distance. And the leader knows this. He sees the shift in their eyes. He feels the temperature change when he enters the room. He recognizes the subtle recoil in their posture. They aren't resisting him, they're evaluating him, assessing whether the power he once displayed was ever real. And nothing terrifies a constructed leader more than being evaluated without filters. His authority is dissolving not because of what you did, but because of what they realized. They realized power that depends on secrecy cannot survive accidental exposure. They realized dominance that requires ritual is not dominance, it's dependency. They realized that true authority doesn't shatter under observation, and once these realizations take root, the hierarchy he built becomes a hollow shrine to a myth collapsing in slow motion. Now the Coven exists in a state of internal civil war, though none of them will admit it. Half of them cling to the old script, desperate for stability. The other half has begun silently distancing themselves, seeking new frameworks, new leaders, new identities. And the leader stands in the center of this psychological battlefield, feeling the ground beneath him sink inch by inch. He is no longer the axis they revolve around. He is the cautionary tale unfolding in real time. But the most devastating consequence is this. None of this required you to intend harm. You didn't strategize. You didn't plot. You didn't reveal secrets or challenge authority. Your presence alone triggered a shift strong enough to dismantle an elite circle from the inside. You became the catalyst without becoming the aggressor. You created the fracture without lifting a hand. And that, more than anything, terrifies them. Because if you could destabilize their hierarchy accidentally, what would happen if you ever acted with intention? Their minds loop around that question in restless cycles. Their coven, once united, is now quietly terrified of the possibility that your influence wasn't accidental at all. That maybe you were always meant to expose them. Maybe your timing wasn't coincidence. Maybe your entrance was the beginning of something larger, something inevitable. They fear that you aren't just a person who walked into a room. You are an event, a shift, a disruption they cannot quantify or prepare for. And this fear is what drags them deeper into unraveling. Because once a hierarchy believes an outside force might be intentional, the paranoia spreads like wildfire. Every memory becomes suspicious. Every detail becomes a clue. They replay your entrance from a dozen angles, as if studying footage of an anomaly. They examine your expression, your posture, your silence, searching for a motive you never had. They imagine strategies you never executed. They analyze your presence as if it were an encoded message, a psychological attack disguised as accident. And the more they search, the more meaning they manufacture. You are no longer a person to them. You are a riddle. And riddles destabilize systems that depend on certainty. The leader, especially, spirals beneath this imagined purpose. He cannot accept that his undoing came so effortlessly. He cannot accept that a stranger undermined his authority without even trying. For someone who built his identity on control, the idea that his collapse was unintentional is unbearable. So he invents intention on your behalf. He convinces himself that you planned it, that you knew what you were walking into, that you targeted him. Because if you didn't, then his authority wasn't defeated. It was fragile all along. And fragile authority is indistinguishable from failure. He begins rewriting the story to protect his ego. He tells his inner circle that your intrusion was calculated. He claims you observed their ritual, not with confusion, but with understanding. He paints you as a strategist lurking outside the door, waiting for the exact moment to fracture the energy of the room. He fabricates complexity around your presence because complexity comforts him. It's easier to imagine a rival than to accept a mirror. If you are a threat, he can justify fear. If you are an accident, he must face the truth. His power was hollow. This narrative spreads through the Coven, not because they believe it, but because they need something to believe. People in collapsing structures will cling to any explanation that makes the collapse feel intentional. Chaos is easier to digest when you assign it an architect, and so your accidental exposure becomes mythologized. They whisper about your timing. They speculate about your background. They assign significance to your silence. They build an entire lore around your presence to avoid acknowledging the truth, that their leader shattered because someone walked in at the wrong moment. But myth-making has consequences. The more they mythologize you, the more gravity you develop in their psychological ecosystem. You become a figure they orbit around, not because you seek attention, but because they can't stop projecting meaning onto you. Every shift in your expression becomes symbolic. Every word you speak becomes studied. Every interaction becomes measured against the moment you exposed them. You become the center of a conversation you never asked to be part of. And with each passing day, their fear transforms from confusion into fixation. This fixation creates factions. Some members begin to resent their leader for collapsing in front of you. They see him as weak, unworthy of the authority he claimed. Others resent you for revealing their weakness. They see you as the force that punctured the bubble they lived in. Another group, small but growing, respects you. They admire the unintentional precision with which you dismantled a hierarchy they silently questioned for years. They see you as a symbol of truth, unfiltered, unavoidable, disruptive, in a way they secretly wish they could be. These factions don't speak openly. Their war is quiet, conducted through glances that last a beat too long, through tension that thickens the air in their meetings, through the cracks that form when people no longer share the same story. The leader feels these fractures but doesn't know how to stop them. He tries to force unity, but forced unity is brittle. It snaps under pressure. The more he demands loyalty, the more obvious it becomes that loyalty is gone. And you, ironically, aren't doing anything. You're not challenging them. You're not speaking about the event. You're not inserting yourself into their unraveling. You simply exist, and your existence alone is enough to distort their structure. That is the part that terrifies them most. Influence that doesn't require effort is indistinguishable from inevitability. They fear that your presence marks the end of their old order. They fear that you are the beginning of something they cannot predict or control. What haunts the leader especially is what you didn't do. You didn't apologize for walking in. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't offer justification or reassurance. You didn't scramble to diffuse tension. You simply observed and left, treating their sacred space like any ordinary room. That neutrality crushed him more effectively than confrontation ever could. Had you reacted with fear, he could have fed on it. Had you reacted with embarrassment, he could have reinforced his dominance. But you reacted with nothing, and nothing stripped him bare. Now he avoids the very room he once ruled. He enters it cautiously, scanning the doorway as if expecting you to reappear at any moment. He tries to reenact the ritual with renewed intensity, but the energy is off. The symbolism feels hollow. The sequence feels forced. Every gesture that used to intimidate now feels like a man trying too hard to reclaim something he lost. Even his followers feel it. They sit in silence as he speaks, but it's not reverence, it's discomfort. They are watching a man who no longer believes in his own performance. This discomfort becomes the silent language they all speak now. They communicate through subtle withdrawal, through hesitation, through the inability to hold his gaze. They can't look at him the way they used to because they saw what he is without the curtain. And they can't look at you because you remind them of the moment the curtain fell. They exist in a limbo of loyalty and doubt, suspended between the identity they were conditioned to uphold and the truth you revealed. And slowly, the fear shifts direction. At first they feared you as an anomaly, then they feared you as a symbol. Now they fear you as a possibility, because if you could unmask their leader accidentally, what could you do intentionally? If your mere presence destabilized their ritual, what would happen if you stepped into their world deliberately? They start imagining futures in which you become a force they have to answer to. Futures in which your insight becomes a threat to their traditions. Futures in which your clarity slices through their illusions like a blade they cannot blunt. The leader senses this shift before anyone else. He feels authority slipping not just from his hands, but from his identity. He feels the Coven's attention drifting toward the idea of you, even if they never speak your name aloud. He feels himself becoming a relic, and in his desperation to reclaim dominance, he begins making mistakes. He pushes too hard, too fast. He commands instead of guides. He demands instead of inspires. He clings to control like someone grabbing a rope, fraying beneath their fingers. But authority that relies on force is already dead. And the more he asserts himself, the more he reveals how powerless he's become. His aggression becomes a confession. His urgency becomes an admission. His ritual becomes parody. And his Coven watches quietly as the man they once feared becomes a man trying to resurrect a ghost. Everything he does now is an attempt to counter you, even though you aren't doing anything. You've become the invisible reference point he measures himself against, the unseen presence he competes with, the silent standard he fears he will never meet. You didn't step into a power struggle. They dragged you into one in their minds. You became part of their mythology without taking a single deliberate step. And this is what marks the true collapse. When a hierarchy starts orienting itself around an external figure, that hierarchy is already dismantled. You became the gravitational force they now revolve around, even in absence. You didn't take their power. They surrendered it by placing too much meaning on your presence. And the more meaning they place on you, the weaker their structure becomes. Because now the real question they fear isn't about their leader. It's about themselves. If they could be controlled by illusion for this long, what else have they surrendered without noticing? What else have they mistaken for power? What else have they kneeled before that wasn't worthy? Your accidental exposure didn't just collapse their hierarchy. It awakened their self-awareness. And self-awareness is fatal to blind obedience. The Coven begins confronting a truth they avoided for years. The ritual was never sacred. It was conditioning. The leader was never untouchable. He was theatrical. Their loyalty was never loyalty. It was inertia. And you, without asking for this role, became the catalyst that forced their minds to confront the difference between dominance and display. The moment you walked into that closed-door ritual room, they weren't witnessing an outsider interrupt power. They were witnessing power evaporate in real time. They were witnessing their own participation in a lie. And nothing shatters a psychological hierarchy more violently than the realization that you were willingly held by chains that weren't locked. Now their fear shifts into something sharper: self-reproach. They look back at the rituals they attended, the speeches they applauded, the whispered orders they carried out, and for the first time, they feel embarrassment. Not anger at you, embarrassment at themselves. And that emotion becomes the wedge that splits the Coven into fragments, each group silently processing their part in sustaining a leader who collapsed under a single unfiltered gaze. You became the unintentional mirror that reflected back to them every compromise they made, every question they silenced, every instinct they buried. Your presence didn't just expose the leader, it exposed the cost of their compliance. And once someone realizes they played a role in their own confinement, they no longer fear the person who exposed it. They fear the person who made that realization possible. They can't run from you. They can't argue with you. They can't deny what happened. They can only avoid the truth you now represent, which is why none of them will look at you. Not because you did anything to them, but because every time their eyes meet yours, the memory resurfaces like a wound they can't cauterize. You are a reminder that their hierarchy wasn't destroyed by rebellion. It was destroyed by one unscripted moment of reality. The leader feels this shift more intensely than anyone else. His authority wasn't just challenged, it was demystified. And demystified power never recovers. He walks through his own coven with the air of a dethroned figure still wearing a crown he can no longer justify. He tries to maintain rituals that now feel hollow even to him. He tries to speak with confidence that even his voice seems unwilling to support. He tries to gather the fragments of his hierarchy into something whole. But you cannot rebuild a structure once those who upheld it now see its internal wiring exposed. He sees the way his followers avoid him. He sees the hesitation when he speaks, the doubt behind their forced nods, the quiet dread that spreads across the room whenever he begins a ritual sequence. He feels their eyes studying him, not with reverence, but with evaluation. Evaluation he cannot control. He has become the subject of their scrutiny, the very position he spent his life avoiding. And the more desperately he fights to restore his dominance, the more obvious it becomes that dominance was never inherent. It was borrowed, and the person they borrowed it from was their own belief. But belief is gone. You took it with you when you walked out of that room. The Coven now exists in a strange psychological limbo, caught between the identity they once served and the truth they can't unsee. They move through their halls like people navigating a world that suddenly lost gravity. They speak in softer tones. They avoid shared glances. They perform their duties with mechanical precision, not out of respect, but out of habit. Rituals continue, but the energy is gone. The atmosphere feels brittle, as if the entire structure might shatter if someone breathes too deeply. And you, ironically, never intended any of this. That's what makes the collapse so poetic. You didn't challenge their hierarchy. You didn't expose secrets. You didn't demand accountability. You didn't even stay long enough to understand what you walked into. You simply opened a door and witnessed what they never wanted anyone to see. Power that only exists when unobserved. Dominance that only works when choreographed. Influence that dissolves under natural light. Your intrusion didn't damage them. It revealed they were already broken. And now, the Coven fears what else you might reveal without trying. They fear your clarity. They fear your neutrality. They fear your refusal to be intimidated. They fear that if you were to step into their world again, even accidentally, the remaining fragments of their hierarchy would crumble to dust. You hold a power they can't quantify, the power of unintentional truth. This is why they avoid you in hallways, why they retreat into corners when you pass, why they speak in carefully measured tones when your name is mentioned. They don't see you as a threat, they see you as an ending disguised as a person. And after experiencing the consequences of your presence once, they can't risk another collapse. Not when they're still trying to salvage the pieces of their identity. The leader, however, sees something different in you. To him, you are not just an ending, you are a verdict. The universe delivered a judgment he didn't expect, and it arrived in the form of a gaze he couldn't dominate. He obsesses over that moment with a desperation bordering on delusion. He reimagines the scene in his mind, trying to adjust details that cannot be changed. He asks himself what he could have done differently, what gesture might have saved him, what sentence could have restored the illusion. But there was nothing, because he wasn't defeated by you. He was defeated by authenticity. Authenticity is the one force ritual cannot control. Now he retreats into shadows he once commanded. He isolates himself under the guise of contemplation, but in truth he is deteriorating. He is drowning in the awareness that his authority depended on no one ever seeing him unprepared. And you saw him at his most unprepared. There is no ritual to erase that, no performance strong enough to overshadow it. He is trapped in a moment he cannot outgrow. And the more he tries to deny its impact, the deeper it pulls him under. Meanwhile, the Coven observes this unraveling with growing discomfort. Their leader once served as their symbol of stability. Now he is the symbol of their mistake. They wonder whether following him was ever a sign of strength, or simply a sign of their own willingness to surrender judgment. They wonder whether submission was disguised as loyalty. They wonder whether they ever truly believed in him, or whether they believed in the narrative he constructed for them. And these questions, the ones he avoided for years, are now the ones suffocating him. Because once self-awareness infects a group, the hierarchy can no longer function. Rituals become rituals only in form. Commands become suggestions. Loyalty becomes performance. And the leader who once dominated them now becomes the figure they silently pity. Nothing erodes respect faster than the realization that fear was misplaced. And so the Coven begins to shift, not with rebellion, but with quiet abandonment. They show up less frequently. They listen less attentively. They obey less rigidly. They follow protocols only when convenient. They no longer treat the leader's presence as a force field. They treat it as an atmosphere they have outgrown. They aren't waiting for a new leader. They aren't looking for a replacement. They are simply detaching from the old structure. And once detachment begins, collapse is no longer a possibility. It is a schedule. You don't witness this collapse directly. You don't participate in it. You don't even think about the Coven after that day. But your shadow lingers in their minds, as if you etched yourself into their internal architecture. To them, you are a reminder that truth doesn't need explanation to cause destruction. It only needs to be seen. Weeks pass, and the Coven becomes more ghost than circle. Members who once dedicated their lives to ritual now begin drifting into new roles, new identities. Some leave entirely, seeking meaning outside the confines of a hierarchy that failed them. Others stay but with empty eyes, moving through motions they no longer believe in. And the leader, he continues trying to resurrect what died the moment you opened that door. But you cannot resurrect a myth once exposed as performance. In private, the remaining members speak about you with caution. They say you carry an energy that disrupts illusions. They say your presence punctures atmospheres others depend on. They say you are unaware of your own influence, which makes you even more dangerous. And in their own way, they're right. You didn't intend to expose an elite occult leader during a closed-door ritual. You didn't aim to shatter a dominance play. You didn't plan to dismantle a hierarchy. But your lack of intention is what made the collapse irreversible. And that's the final truth the Coven must face. Your power is not strategic. It is intrinsic. It is not loud. It is precise. It is not disruptive by force. It is disruptive by nature. You are the kind of presence that reveals rather than attacks. And revealing is the one thing no dominance ritual can survive. The Coven won't look at you not because they fear punishment, but because they fear reflection. They fear what they became. They fear what they enabled. They fear the parts of themselves they discovered the moment the illusion fell. And they fear that if you looked at them again, you would see the remnants of a hierarchy that died under its own weight. Their leader, now a fragment of who he pretended to be, avoids mirrors for the same reason they avoid you. He cannot face the truth that his reign ended without a battle. It ended without defiance. It ended without ceremony. It ended the moment someone walked into a private room and saw him without his mask. And perhaps that is what makes your presence so powerful. Your ability to annihilate illusions without lifting a single intentional hand. You are the quiet force that rewrites atmospheres. The accidental mirror that reveals invisible fractures. The event that unfolds not through action, but through existence. You didn't mean to expose an elite occult leader during a closed-door ritual. You simply walked in. And the moment you did, the truth walked in with you. Their hierarchy didn't fall because you attacked it. It fell because it was never strong enough to withstand being seen. And now, they carry the weight of that realization in their silence, in their avoidance, in the way they look away when you enter the room, quietly acknowledging what they cannot speak. That the dominance they worshipped was shattered, that the Coven they belonged to has dissolved, and that you, without meaning to, became the force that ended their illusion forever. Ah, welcome back. You precision-forged minds who don't raise your voice because you don't need to. The ones who never posture, never flinch, never break formation, yet somehow manage to dismantle entire strategies with a single message. You know exactly what you did, don't you? You dropped a response so clean, so surgically calibrated, so devoid of excess, that it sliced straight through the psychological armor they spent months constructing. One reply. Just one. And everything they had been rehearsing, everything they had been preparing, everything they thought would corner you, started bleeding out in real time. You could feel the shift instantly. The moment your words hit their screen, their posture changed, their breathing changed. Their entire operational confidence collapsed under the weight of clarity they never expected you to have. They assumed you were still confused, still uncertain, still vulnerable to their narrative hooks. They didn't know you had already mapped their intentions, charted their pressure points, and watched them run the same tired pattern over and over until the pattern became transparent. They thought they could overwhelm you with volume. They thought they could drown you in contradictions and half-truths, and that exhausting emotional fog manipulators use to keep their victims off balance. But you didn't drown. You didn't get pulled into the current. You didn't chase explanations or defend your integrity or argue your perspective. You simply stepped outside the frame entirely and delivered a response that wasn't emotional, wasn't reactive, and wasn't playing the game they designed. Your message was a scalpel, one movement, one incision, one undeniable slice of truth. And the moment it landed, their entire structure, built on deception, on performance, on control, began to rupture. They weren't ready for that level of precision. They weren't prepared for a message that didn't give them a foothold, didn't give them material to twist, didn't give them an emotional angle to exploit. They were preparing for resistance. They were preparing for defensiveness. They were preparing for the chaos they hoped to push you into. But instead they encountered surgical calm. And nothing is more dangerous to a manipulator than calm truth spoken without fear. Look at them now. Refreshing messages, deleting screenshots, rewriting chat histories, as if the digital cleanup will somehow erase the psychological wound your response opened. They're scrambling because they know the evidence doesn't make them look strategic. It makes them look exposed. They're trying to delete the very messages they once used to maintain control, because now those messages read differently. Now those messages expose intention. Now those messages confirm what you already saw long before your reply. And that realization is eating them alive. You didn't yell. You didn't accuse. You didn't provide a long explanation they could twist. You responded with just enough truth to illuminate their entire operation. And once you shine light on a strategy built in the dark, it begins to decay instantly. That is what's happening right now. The decay. Their plan is dying in real time, hemorrhaging credibility, bleeding through the cracks they tried so hard to hide. But let's be honest, the real reason they're terrified isn't because your response destroyed their strategy. It's because your response revealed you were never in the position they thought you were in. They had convinced themselves you were disoriented. They had convinced themselves you were manipulable, emotional, easy to provoke. They had convinced themselves that your silence was confusion, when really, your silence was data collection. They thought they were hunting you, but all along, you were studying them with a level of detachment they don't possess. That's why your message hit the way it did. It wasn't a reaction, it was a conclusion. Now they're asking themselves the questions that keep manipulators awake at night. If you saw through this, what else did you see through? What other conversations did you read correctly? What other tactics did you quietly disarm without ever mentioning? What else have you known this entire time without giving them any indication that you were aware? Because your response didn't just counter their strategy. It proved you were never under their control at all. And that is the kind of revelation that detonates a manipulator's internal system. They rely on predictability. They rely on mapping your reactions. They rely on frameworks that keep you emotionally engaged, emotionally invested, emotionally tangled. When you respond surgically, you demonstrate you're not tangled at all. You demonstrate you're outside the entire structure. And that makes them terrified. Your message didn't escalate. It ended. It didn't argue. It clarified. It didn't plead. It stated. And when someone's trap depends on emotional entanglement, meeting it with surgical clarity doesn't just break the trap. It exposes the trap's creator. That is why they are deleting evidence right now. Not because they're cleaning up for you, but because they're cleaning up for themselves. Because they know the people watching, the people in their circle, the people they bragged to, the people they weaponized against you. They're now seeing the truth. You didn't embarrass them with emotion. You embarrassed them with accuracy. Let's talk about that accuracy for a moment. Because the potency of your message wasn't in what you said, it was in what you didn't say. It was in the restraint, in the discipline, in the refusal to engage in theatrics. Manipulators weaponize dramatics. They rely on escalation. When you refuse to escalate with them, when you respond with surgical calm, you sever the emotional tether they were counting on. And suddenly, they're the only ones spiraling. They're the only ones emotional. They're the only ones exposed. They crafted their messages, expecting to be able to twist your words. They were preparing rebuttals. They were preparing paragraphs. They were preparing screenshotable moments they could spin. But your response denied them all of that. Your message was too clean, too precise, too grounded in truth to be manipulated. It didn't give them leverage. It gave them a mirror. That's why their strategy is bleeding out, because they're now forced to confront a reality they avoided at all costs. You see them, you see the pattern, you see the manipulation, you see the tactics, you see the psychological traps, you see the bait, and you don't step into any of it. Instead, you respond with the kind of clarity that reveals you've been aware longer than they realized, and now they're terrified because they thought they were 3 steps ahead. But your message proves you were 8 steps ahead the entire time. Now the collapse begins. Watch how they behave in the coming moments. They'll try to spin your message. They'll try to reinterpret it. They'll try to pretend they misunderstood. They'll pretend they're confused. They'll ask clarifying questions designed to bait you into elaborating, because elaboration provides them material. Elaboration gives them angles. Elaboration creates openings. But your response, the original one, did none of that. It closed every door. And now their only hope is to get you to open one again. Their panic is not an accident. It is the natural consequence of encountering someone who refuses to operate within their framework. Someone who answers with truth instead of theatrics. Someone who understands that the sharpest blade is the one used sparingly. Someone who knows the power of saying less. Someone who knows the psychological violence of calmness. They thought their screen was a battlefield. But the real battlefield was perception. And they lost the second they realized your awareness wasn't something they could manipulate. Your message didn't just expose their lies, it exposed their dependence on those lies. It showed that without deception, without distortion, without emotional baiting, they have no ground to stand on. That's why they're deleting messages, not because they're fixing mistakes, but because they're trying to bury evidence of who they were when they thought you weren't watching. But you were watching, silently, patiently, strategically. And when the moment came, you didn't match their chaos. You performed incision. You delivered a response that stripped their strategy bare, leaving it defenseless, bleeding, exposed to daylight. And once the truth bleeds, it doesn't clot. It spreads. Even now, other people are starting to see it. The ones they confided in, the ones they manipulated, the ones they convinced into believing their version of reality. Those people are reading your message, and suddenly, the story looks different. Suddenly, the pattern becomes obvious. Suddenly, the cracks in their narrative widen, and the manipulator knows it. That fear they're feeling isn't fear of losing the argument. It's fear of losing their mask. You didn't just win a conversation. You shattered a performance. And that's why they're spiraling. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're wiping digital fingerprints like a criminal after a failed operation. Because they know the truth is out. They know their strategy couldn't withstand clarity. They know their foundation couldn't survive honesty. They know their entire operation was fragile, dependent on you never noticing the seams. And your response didn't just notice the seams, it tore them open. Now they're scrambling not to save the argument, but to save face, to save reputation, to save the illusion that gave them power. But illusions die under direct light, and your message was light incarnate. Clean, sharp, unforgiving. And as their strategy continues to bleed out, dripping into every corner of their narrative, staining everything they built, you remain still, calm, detached, watching the collapse unfold exactly as it was always destined to. Because the moment you chose precision over emotion, the outcome became inevitable. They threw chaos at you, hoping you'd drown. You answered with surgical truth, and now they're drowning in their own contradictions. And this is the part no one prepared them for. The part where the collapse becomes public. The part where their carefully maintained facade begins disintegrating in front of an audience they were so sure they had under control. They weren't expecting witnesses to see the blood trail. They weren't expecting their own words to betray them. They weren't expecting their strategy to rupture so quickly that even the people who used to defend them are now stepping away slowly, trying not to be associated with a sinking ship. Because the moment someone's confidence breaks, it spreads. Fear is contagious. Doubt is contagious. And your message triggered both with lethal accuracy. They thought this would be a controlled burn, a manageable conflict they could twist and narrate however they wanted. But your response created a wildfire. It exposed the dry rot beneath their certainty. It revealed how flimsy their entire operation really was. And now the flames are spreading through their group chats, their private messages, their social interactions, their allies' perceptions. You didn't just cut their strategy, you punctured the ecosystem that supported it. That's why they're deleting so aggressively. Because the truth isn't just bleeding, it's leaking into minds that were never supposed to see behind the curtain. People they manipulated, people they convinced, people they relied on for validation. Suddenly those people are seeing the truth without you having to say anything further. Suddenly, the illusion they built is collapsing in their own hands. And what makes this even more devastating is the simplicity of what caused it. Not a fight, not an argument, not a declaration of war, just a surgical response. A message so clean, so stripped of theatrics, so uncomfortably factual that it removed every route they had to regain control. You didn't attack them, you didn't insult them, you didn't give them a spectacle to twist. Instead, you created an open wound they cannot close. Now the panic takes on a new shape, paranoia. Not the loud kind, the quiet, tightening kind. The kind that makes them replay the conversation over and over, searching for angles that no longer exist. The kind that makes them wonder who else saw the message, who else interpreted it correctly, who else is silently questioning them. Because manipulators rely on certainty. They rely on knowing where everyone stands. And your message shattered their map entirely. You didn't just remove their power, you removed their predictability. And that is the one thing manipulators cannot survive without. They can handle pushback, they can handle confrontation, they can even handle insults, but they cannot handle unpredictability. They cannot handle clarity, spoken with no emotional leakage. They cannot handle someone who does not take their bait. Your response exposed something deeper, their dependence on your confusion. Their entire strategy was built around the hope that you wouldn't notice, that you would keep explaining, keep defending, keep emotionally reacting, because as long as you reacted, they had leverage. But your surgical message cut every tether at once. And once a manipulator loses leverage, they lose identity. Watch how they shift now. Their messages get shorter, Their explanations become inconsistent. Their tone swings between forced calm and concealed panic. That's the unraveling. That's the psychological hemorrhaging. They are desperately trying to appear composed while scrambling behind the scenes to hide the digital fingerprints of their intentions. And yet, the more they delete, the more obvious the guilt becomes. Deletion is an admission, revision is confession, scrambling is surrender. They don't realize this yet, but everyone watching sees it. Everyone reading the conversation understands what's happening, even if they don't articulate it. People sense desperation the same way they sense smoke before a fire. And right now, their desperation is suffocating the narrative they tried so hard to control. Let's talk about why your message was so destabilizing. It wasn't the words themselves, it was the stance behind them. For the first time, you communicated without needing anything in return. You didn't need validation, clarity, defense, or reconciliation. Your message was final, not because you declared it, but because it carried the weight of someone who has already stepped beyond the battlefield. When someone who's been silent finally speaks with precision, the entire dynamic shifts. Silence becomes strength. Clarity becomes authority. And that's what they felt. Authority. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't raise its voice because it doesn't need to. They didn't expect authority from you. They expected emotional reaction. This is why they're spiraling. Because your message didn't just address the moment, it revealed who you had become. Someone they cannot play with. Someone they cannot redirect. Someone they cannot manipulate through emotional turbulence. Someone who sees through all of it with unwavering clarity. And here's the beautiful thing. You didn't try to be powerful. You became powerful because you stopped feeding their illusion. Their strategy needed your confusion to survive. When you responded surgically, you cut off its oxygen supply. Strategies built on manipulation don't die loudly. They suffocate. Slowly at first, then all at once. Now they're experiencing the all-at-once phase. And you're watching it unfold with the same calm that triggered the collapse in the first place. But this is where the psychology deepens. Because your message didn't just expose their tactics, it exposed their fear. And fear, when revealed, becomes weakness. Manipulators survive by hiding their weakness behind performance. Once the performance cracks, they have nothing left to stand on. And right now, the cracks are spreading faster than they can patch them. Look closer. They keep checking when you were last active. They keep rereading your message. They keep anticipating follow-ups that aren't coming. This is what happens when someone loses control. They search for signals that confirm whether the person they once underestimated is truly done engaging. Your silence now is as threatening as your clarity was, because they don't know if you're done or if you're simply observing. They don't know if your message was the final strike or the opening incision. They don't know what you know. And that not knowing is eating them alive. Manipulators are terrified of ambiguity they don't control. And you've become the embodiment of that ambiguity. Every moment of your stillness feels like judgment. Every minute you don't respond feels like exposure. Every breath they take after reading your message feels like waiting for consequences they cannot predict. You're not punishing them, you're simply not participating. And that alone is punishment. Because now, they are trapped in a room with their own behavior, forced to confront the very things they spent so long deflecting from. That's the real surgical strike. You didn't cut them, you made them cut themselves. And this is the psychological moment where the audience begins to shift. People who once believed their version of events begin questioning. People who once echoed their narrative begin distancing themselves. People who once backed them begin observing from a safer vantage point. Because clarity, once released, spreads like wildfire. It doesn't need your help. It doesn't need your reinforcement. It operates independently. Your message is doing that right now. It's traveling silently through the mental landscape of everyone who has witnessed this interaction. It's reshaping perceptions without you having to lift another finger. And the manipulator can feel this shift. They can feel control slipping through their hands like water they can no longer cup. That's why they're deleting. That's why they're rewriting. That's why they're acting frantic behind the scenes while pretending to be composed in public. They're losing the narrative because your clarity rewrote it. And now comes the most devastating realization for them. Your response wasn't for them. It was a statement of awareness, a declaration of alignment with your own perspective. Once someone reaches that level of clarity, manipulators can no longer access them. You removed yourself from their psychological arena. They're swinging at shadows, fighting a battle you're no longer present for. That's why their strategy is bleeding out. They're still trying to fight, while you've already stepped into a different dimension of communication entirely. Let's go even deeper. The true fear they're experiencing isn't about the argument or the messages. They're afraid of the exposure. They're afraid of being seen accurately. Manipulators spend their lives crafting an identity they hope others will believe. When your message cut through that facade, it didn't just collapse their strategy. It revealed the truth behind it. And for someone who relies on narrative manipulation, being seen clearly is equivalent to psychological death. Your response forced them into a confrontation with themselves. And that confrontation is unbearable. That's why they're deleting evidence as if they can erase the moment clarity arrived. But clarity isn't stored in messages, it's stored in perception. They can delete the text, but they cannot delete the shift. The audience already felt it. You already felt it. Their attempts at rewriting reality are too late. The truth already escaped the containment zone, and as they scramble, here's what sets you apart. You remain unmoved, untriggered, unshaken. You don't need to react because your message was complete. It did its work. It carries its own momentum. You don't have to revisit it or expand it or defend it. The sentence stands on its own, like a blade left in a wooden table, silent, embedded, undeniable. Their collapse is no longer your concern. Their panic is no longer your responsibility. Their unraveling is simply the natural consequence of their own actions, now that the protective illusion has been stripped away. This is the moment where the power dynamic becomes undeniable. Not because you asserted power, but because you revealed the absence of theirs. You see, real authority doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't perform. Real authority reveals itself through stability. And your stability is what terrifies them. You didn't flail. You didn't react. You didn't fall for any emotional bait. You delivered truth and then stood still, while the truth did what truth always does. It reshaped the landscape. Now they're living in that new landscape, one they cannot control, one where your awareness rewired every assumption they made. This is why they're spiraling. Their entire strategy depended on who they assumed you were. Your message proved you are someone else entirely. Someone they don't know how to disarm. Someone they don't know how to manipulate. Someone they don't know how to predict. And when a manipulator cannot predict you, they cannot control you. When they cannot control you, they cannot engage. When they cannot engage, they collapse under the weight of their own tactics. That's what you're witnessing. Self-destruction disguised as damage control. You changed the psychological terrain without raising your voice, without arguing, without performing. You altered the rules of engagement with a single response crafted so cleanly that it didn't just answer them, it diagnosed them. It showed them their tactics were visible, their patterns were transparent, and their attempts at subtle control were not subtle at all. And manipulators cannot survive the moment they are seen clearly. They don't fear losing an argument. They fear losing the illusion that allowed them to dictate reality. Your message didn't wound them because of its tone. It wounded them because of what it revealed. They never held the power they believed they did. Now they're scrambling to rewrite history, deleting messages, editing old conversations, trying to manually stitch together a version of events that favors them. They don't realize how pathetic it looks. They don't understand how obvious the panic is. Every vanished message is a confession. Every altered paragraph is a spotlight. Every missing piece of the conversation screams louder than anything they could have written. They're not cleaning up. They're exposing themselves further. And while they're doing all of that, you remain untouched. Your message stands. It doesn't need editing. It doesn't need clarification. It doesn't need reinforcement. It exists like a scalpel left on a sterile table, sharp, precise, undeniable. They can throw noise at it, spin around it, pretend it means something else, but the more they try to reinterpret your clarity, the more unhinged they appear. Because clarity does not bend. Truth does not adapt itself for comfort. And precision does not require a sequel. They're still trying to figure out how you knew, how you saw through the theatrics, how you recognized the pattern when they invested so much into hiding it. They keep replaying their older messages, analyzing them, searching for the moment they slipped and showed too much. They'll never find it, because the collapse didn't happen from a single misstep. It happened because they never understood the person they were dealing with. They assumed you were playing the same emotional game they were. They assumed you were reacting from impulse instead of awareness. They assumed you were fragile enough to break on command. But everything they assumed was a projection of their own instability. Your message revealed that contrast. It shattered the projection. It forced them to realize that the person they were fighting was far more composed, far more observant, far more psychologically mature than they ever anticipated. And now they're choking on that realization. Manipulators don't know how to fight someone they can't destabilize. They don't know how to navigate when their opponent isn't tangled in the emotional net they cast. They don't know how to breathe in a space where truth outweighs theatrics. Every minute since your response landed, they've been trying to regain footing. But the ground beneath them is gone. Your clarity removed it. You stripped them of their familiar weapons: confusion, projection, contradiction, emotional bait. None of those tools work anymore, because you're no longer standing close enough for them to reach. You shifted from participant to observer, and observers cannot be controlled. This is why their messages feel strange now. Hesitant, polished, artificial. They're editing themselves in real time, as if caution can rebuild the control they lost. They're terrified of saying too much, terrified of revealing more pattern, terrified of triggering another surgical response they cannot survive. You turned the conversation into a minefield for them. Every word they write feels like a risk. Every response feels like an exposure. Their confidence has inverted into trembling restraint. And that trembling is where the truth lives. They want to appear composed, but the pressure betrays them. The timing betrays them. The unnecessary explanations betray them. The attempts at polite neutrality betray them. They don't realize that over-explaining is a symptom of guilt. That sudden politeness is a symptom of fear. That rapid message deletion is a symptom of panic. You didn't have to accuse them of anything. Your clarity made their behavior reveal everything for you. And the most brutal part? You're not even trying. You're not crafting strategies. You're not engaging in psychological warfare intentionally. You're simply aligned with truth. And truth is the most destabilizing force to someone who relies on distortion. You're simply communicating from a place of emotional adulthood, and that alone dismantles anyone who's still operating from manipulation as a survival mechanism. They're not deleting the evidence to protect themselves from you. They're deleting it to protect themselves from the reflection they saw when your message hit. For the first time, they saw how they behave through someone else's eyes. They saw the pettiness, the twisting, the covert hostility, the scripted emotional traps. Your sentence served as a mirror, and what they saw in it forced them into a psychological recoil they were not built to withstand. And now everything they do is reactive. Not a single move is strategic anymore. Their energy is scattered, their composure shattered, their narrative leaking through cracks they cannot seal. From the outside, it looks like confusion. From the inside, it feels like implosion. But the collapse is not the remarkable part. The remarkable part is the silence around it. Because as they unravel, people are watching. People who once believed them, people who once defended them, people who once absorbed their narrative without question. But now, those people are taking a step back. Not because you convinced them, but because the truth revealed itself. When someone panics publicly, when someone deletes evidence frantically, when someone starts over-explaining details that no one asked for, the truth becomes louder than accusations. Your message did not just end their strategy, it infected their credibility, and credibility, once damaged, doesn't regenerate. And here's the part that stings them the most. You aren't celebrating, you aren't taunting, you aren't chasing a win. You simply moved on. You continued existing with the same calm that started their unraveling. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than consequences that unfold without your participation. It means they lost control at a molecular level. It means the collapse is coming from inside their own system, not from anything you're doing. You didn't destroy them. You exposed the fact that they were already destroying themselves. Your message just removed the curtain. And that realization is the psychological blow they cannot recover from. Because once someone sees that their power was never real, they cannot recreate it. Once someone realizes their control depended on your confusion, they cannot regain control over someone who is no longer confused. Once someone realizes they misjudged you so profoundly, they begin to question every assumption they ever made, not about you, but about themselves. And that internal questioning is fatal to their identity. They don't know who they are without control. They don't know how to communicate without manipulation. They don't know how to function without the illusion that they always hold the upper hand. This is when the collapse becomes irreversible. Because the thing manipulators fear most is not exposure, it's emptiness. The emptiness that appears when their tactics stop working. The emptiness that appears when someone they once controlled stands in front of them, unshaken, untouched, unreactive. Your message created that emptiness. Your clarity hollowed out the space where their dominance once lived. And now they're trying to fill it with anything. Excuses, apologies, silence, overcorrection, selective amnesia. They're reaching for tactics that once worked flawlessly, only to find that every move now fails on contact. And failure, to someone who lives off psychological leverage, is annihilation. It erodes them. It dissolves the mask. It forces them to face how weak and undeveloped they are beneath the persona. And the more they feel that weakness, the more desperate their attempts to hide it become. That's why they're deleting messages. That's why they're rewriting conversations. That's why they're suddenly talking in a tone too soft, too measured, too careful. Their behavior is cracking under the pressure of being illuminated, and the cracks are widening with every passing moment. But here's the truth they cannot outrun. Once someone has seen you clearly, there's no version of the mask that will fool them again. You've seen the pattern. You've seen the workings behind their words. You've seen the motives behind their tone. You've seen the shape of the game long enough to recognize its moves without needing proof. And this terrifies them more than anything else because they know it means they have no more hiding places. They can't manipulate someone who has left the battlefield. They can't bait someone who no longer wants to win the argument. They can't control someone who has no interest in their approval. They can't twist a message that was built with surgical precision. You didn't just step out of their trap. You stepped beyond their entire framework. And now, they are alone in a space they once believed they controlled. And in that loneliness, something starts to unravel deeper inside them. The recognition that the relationship they imagined was never mutual. You were honest. You were clear. You communicated in good faith. They communicated in tactics. You spoke to connect. They spoke to control. You responded for clarity. They responded to confuse. Your message exposed this asymmetry so painfully that they can no longer pretend it wasn't real. This is why they're frightened. They're not afraid of consequences you might impose. They're afraid of the consequences they created for themselves. Manipulators depend on people not noticing the pattern. Once the pattern is seen, their entire identity collapses. Because that identity was built on performance, not authenticity. It only survives in shadows, in ambiguity, in doubt. You removed the shadows. You removed the ambiguity. You removed the doubt. And with doubt removed, their strategy cannot breathe. Their control cannot breathe. Their illusions cannot breathe. They're suffocating in the clarity you delivered. And the more they suffocate, the more their behavior shifts from strategic to erratic. They start reaching out to people they once bragged to, trying to preemptively control the narrative. They start planting half-truths in conversations, hoping to rewrite perception before it solidifies. They start distancing themselves from their own previous messages, pretending they were misunderstood, misinterpreted, misrepresented. But the frantic nature of their behavior is louder than any explanation they provide. Everyone can feel the panic now. Everyone can see the cracks. Everyone can sense the desperation leaking through their carefully measured sentences. The tone they're using now is not the tone of someone in control. It's the tone of someone trying desperately to appear in control while standing on psychological ruins. But you're not reacting to any of it, and that stillness is devastating them. They expected you to respond. They expected you to justify. They expected you to argue. They expected a rematch. Manipulators don't know what to do when someone refuses emotional involvement. They rely on emotional energy to sustain their tactics. But your silence, your composure, your lack of participation is cutting off the supply they depended on. They're collapsing, not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're not doing. And what you're not doing is playing their game. You stepped out of the arena, leaving them alone with the consequences they crafted. And the moment someone realizes the person they were trying to manipulate has detached from them completely, it creates a psychological vacuum, a void, where the manipulator's identity used to feed on the reactions of others. Without your reactions, They have nothing to feed on, nothing to anchor themselves to, nothing to redirect, nothing to distort. They are starving for emotional leverage, and the starvation is making them frantic. That franticness is spreading into their relationships. People who once defended them now see hesitation. People who once backed them now sense instability. People who once echoed their narrative now feel the unease that comes when a manipulator loses control. They're not just losing you, they're losing the image they portrayed to everyone else. This is how psychological strategy truly bleeds out, not through confrontation, but through quiet exposure. Your message didn't just wound them, it drained the energy source that powered their behavior. It stripped them of the illusion that kept others believing in them. It revealed their tactics so cleanly that even silence now incriminates them. They're trying to hide the damage, but the damage is happening internally, invisibly, irrevocably. And while they're drowning, you're rising, not by force, not by revenge, but by clarity. Clarity always elevates. It removes the clutter. It removes the noise. It removes the hooks they once placed in your emotions. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're not seeking closure. You already closed the door with your message. You ended the cycle without needing theatrics. And endings without theatrics are the ones manipulators cannot comprehend. To them, everything is a performance. To you, everything is truth. And truth is lethal to those who depend on illusion. Now they're left facing the aftermath, the realization that their strategy didn't just fail, it exposed them. The realization that the power they believed they held was borrowed from your confusion. The realization that deleting messages cannot delete perception. The realization that they are no longer feared, no longer respected, no longer believed. The realization that the control they relied on was never theirs to begin with. Clarity took it back. And this is where the journey ends, not with a dramatic confrontation, not with a final explosion, but with a quiet shift in consciousness. A shift so profound that it cannot be undone. You walked away with your integrity intact. They remain behind, trying to sweep up the fragments of a strategy that bleeds out no matter how tightly they try to patch the wound. Because you didn't just respond, you performed surgery, and the truth is still bleeding.